Blog Talk Radio.
What's my purpose? Lord, what's your will? Should I run this race aloud, or should I silently be still and never ending? Is your love what my praise should be the same? Lord, I'll bless your holy name. So Lord, 24/7 I'm giving to you for a perfect work and a start anew. With a sword in hand and your word in heart, we'll be coming out of the graveyard singing hallelujah to the Lord of hosts. You saved our lives and you made us whole. Hallelujah to the King of Kings. Jesus, we love you, that's the reason we sing. Hallelujah, bless the Lord. Oh, hallelujah, bless the Lord. Hallelujah, bless the Lord. Hallelujah, bless the Lord. Hallelujah to the Lord of hosts. You saved our lives and you made us whole. Hallelujah to the King of Kings. Jesus, we love you, that's the reason we sing. What's my purpose? Lord, what's your will? Should I run this race aloud? Should I silently be still and never ending? Is your love? Oh, my praise should be the same. Lord, I'll bless your holy name, and right on time just your will unfolds. Lord, you open up our eyes as you light up empty skies. So Lord, 24/7 I'm giving to you for a perfect work and a start anew. With a sword in hand and your word in heart, we'll be coming out of the graveyard singing hallelujah to the Lord of hosts. You saved our lives and you made us whole. Hallelujah to the King of Kings. Jesus, we love you, that's the reason we sing. Hallelujah, bless the Lord. Hallelujah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Doors of Deception on Blog Talk Radio. We have for you tonight our guest, who is author William Ramsey, and he is the author of the book Prophet of Evil, and it's a book about Aleister Crowley and the cult connections of Aleister Crowley to 9/11 and the New World Order. The actual long title of the book is Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11 and the New World Order. Anyway, so William will be joining us in a little bit. So I'd like to just take a few moments to welcome all of you here and to tell you a little bit about something really, really bizarre that happened to me on Saturday night, which is just actually another example of how once you are sealed and protected by the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, that nothing that the enemy has, any power of the enemy, will not be able to harm you by any means. Saturday night, I was cooking dinner, and all of a sudden, my kitchen looked like someone had turned on a welding machine. There was a bright, brilliant flash of light, and sparks were flying everywhere. And I jumped back from the pan that I was stirring, and luckily my husband was standing, or fortunately, scratch that word, fortunately my husband was standing right there, because he would have never believed it. Well, he goes over and tries to grab the pan, and it won't come off the burner. So he yanks it, and then we see this au jus running all over the stove, and he tosses the pan in the sink and starts mopping up the au jus, and grabs the pan and looks at it, and literally the pan was welded to the burner of the stove, and there's a hole in the pan, and there's a big melted mark right in the metal coil of the burner, and I'm standing there, and I am just like in total awe that 220 volts just didn't go, rushing through my system. So anyway, Wow. The angels of protection were surrounding me for sure. And again, I had a witness because if I would have told my husband the kitchen looked like someone had turned on a welding machine and there were sparks flying everywhere and then the pan welded itself to the burner, he would have went, yeah. Okay, honey, I think you better go sit down for a minute. Anyway, so that's my harrowing story of the week. Pretty bizarre. Anyway, I do believe that William is with us, so let me see if I can bring him on here. Hello, is this William Ramsey?
It is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I do. I hear you very well.
Excellent. Welcome to Doors of Deception Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. I've been very excited to have you on as a guest. I had the opportunity last August while I was on vacation. I did take a little bit of a break one night for a couple of hours to listen to L.A. Marzulli's show the night that he had you on. And I was absolutely riveted the research and everything that you did on Aleister Crowley. I'm recovering, healed, and delivered former occultist myself, so I knew some of Crowley. I didn't stay with Crowley too long because he, even to me, seemed like a very nasty man, and so I pretty much left that for other things. But I appreciate the information that you sent me. I learned some things about Crowley that I didn't know before. So would you like to tell me? Go ahead and tell us what you uncovered about Aleister Crowley.
Great. Yeah, I was the person who was not very knowledgeable about the occult. I had probably very topical understanding, but I was very much of an in-depth researcher into 9/11, and I kept seeing these numbers. And over time, the repetition of these numbers, and I kept seeing them outside of even the elements of 9/11, and I was really trying to figure out what they meant. And one of the main numbers was September 11th. That happened on the 11th, and there was a Flight 11, and I started researching, and my researching into the occult, I really read as much of these books as I could, and they led me back pretty much to Crowley. 93, 77, and 11 are really high satanic numbers. If not 11, it may be the master number. And so that even led me into more research into Aleister Crowley and his life and what these people are really like, because I really didn't know much about black magicians. So that led me to read even more, and I recognized how important a figure Crowley was in the Western world and to 9/11 and this kind of what we call the New World Order, that his ideas and his experiences have definitely permeated this new reorganization of the world, and were, in my opinion, an instrumental and significant part of the 9/11 event. So what it led me to do is really write a book. So I really read all of his stuff. He was addicted to reading and writing. He thought of himself as literature. He never really had to work. He was fortunate enough to inherit a significant amount of money. And he also lived at the real apex of the English Empire, the late 19th century, when the sun never set on England. And he was able to world travel and really see and experience a lot of other type of religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and he compiled that and pretty much made his own religion in his life, and he called it basically the religion of Thelema, or the will. He was a member of a wide variety of secret organizations as well. So Crowley is a very significant person, and for me it was a real eye-opener, and that's why I wrote my book.
Some of the esoteric organizations, what were some of them?
Well, he started out, really got interested. When he was younger, he was privileged enough to go to the best schools in England at the time, and he went to Cambridge, and while he was at Cambridge, he became interested in the occult and heard about a secret society called the Golden Dawn, and that was really how he started off, was this very significant society of magicians in England, in London, and they were all 33rd degree Masons and beyond. They basically were people who had gone through the whole process of Masonry and decided to go even farther. And Crowley modeled a lot of his life upon his influences from there. One of the main influences was MacGregor Mathers, who had a temple also in London and in Paris. These were kind of like the turn of the century, kind of golden epoch, this kind of cultural flowering that was taking place in Europe at the time. And so Crowley went from the Golden Dawn to passing through all the degrees of Masonry, 33 degrees. He also started his own magical fraternity called the AA, Astra Argentum, which is basically the silver star of the moon. And then he also became the head of a really particularly nasty satanic organization called the OTO, which was a German secret society. It's the Order of Oriental Templars, or Ordo Templi Orientis. And he became its head and was its head until he died in 1947.
Wow. I never knew that the OTO was a German order.
Yes. It originally started in Germany with a bunch of people who were also 33rd degree Masons. So it was a lot like the Golden Dawn.
Right. And I had looked very seriously at sending in an application letter to the Golden Dawn at one time. Whew. Anyway, glad I didn't do that. But I always was real, I'm sort of I don't like to just take anything that anyone tells me and just swallow it hook, line, and sinker and, do as I'm told, so to speak. I mean, I'm obedient to the Lord, but other than that, I'm not just going to take anybody's stuff. So, that saved me from actually trying to join any of these formal institutions. So anyway, in the Golden Dawn, it just started admitting women, I think, what do you know? I think it was like the early 70s. But
yeah, I'm not familiar. It's my understanding that Golden Dawn did have female members back in the 19th century.
Oh, they did. Kind of like, Blavatsky ended up becoming a 33rd degree Mason, which is almost unheard of for women. They usually, route the women over to the Eastern Star organization. So anyway, yeah. Now, I know he had a very unusual, paradoxical childhood. So let's go backwards a little bit. His family, his father and his mother, were a very strict fundamentalist sect of Christians, but yet they earned their living because they owned a brewery.
Right. That is an interesting paradox because he grew up in a fundamentalist, non-drinking family who made its money from shares in a brewery. And they sold sandwiches and beer throughout England. And it made them enough money. In today's terms, when Crowley's father died, they said he inherited the modern equivalent of $20 million. So it was very significant even from back then. And Crowley lived his life with a lot of panache. He spent his money. He really had no financial skills. He ran through most of his inheritance by the time he was 40. But if he would have spent it wisely, he could have lived a very comfortable life his whole life.
Right. I know the stuff you sent me, there was a little blurb that he had said something about he was never taught he was always, I'm going to paraphrase here, raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. I mean, he was, raised to expect every luxury and every whim that he had private tutors and then that sort of thing, and like you said, went to the best schools, very wealthy. He was never taught anything about how that money came into into his family or how to earn it or anything like that. So yeah, consequently, he burned through the equivalent of $20 million by the time he was 40, and that is quite. Wow, that's quite something. That's spending money like water, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and he spent everything. When he wrote his books, once he started really writing his poetry, his books, he spent money on the best book materials. He never skimped on it. He had the best, vellum, which is basically animal skins. Mm-hmm. He spent money on clothes. He was used to just calling his uncle and asking for money, so he really had no concept of a good hard day's work, and he actually never worked a hard day in his life. He never actually had a job.
Right.
He spent, once he ran out of his money, he basically was a a parasite on his followers and really expected to be taken care of. And people sent him money up until the day he died.
Wow. Yeah, and I understand that, again, from the material that you sent me, that there isn't a publisher today that would take, especially White Stains, and publish it publicly. It would today even would have to go to an underground self-printing. Would probably only be sold in seedy, books, pornographic bookstores and places like that, right?
Agreed. Yeah, and he took great pains great efforts to disguise the real authorship of some of these books. Now looking back, it was easy to trace it because people have done the research. But these were all written under pseudonyms, and they were paid for by Crowley, and they were produced by the smallest publishing houses out there. But there was seemingly a demand for them in their small printing. So yeah, they're particularly vicious, and some of his poetry is of the most vile stripe.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's I think that's too why I didn't spend much time. I looked over some of his work and didn't really, because I had also, from what I understood, he veiled or left out a lot of the pertinent information that is actually required to do a lot of the rituals that he himself practiced and did and things like that. And there's reasons for that, because as you move up the esoteric order, they give you more and more responsibility, and then you would then understand what was encoded in his work and that sort of thing. And you found that to be true as well?
Absolutely. He used something called blinds, where he would intentionally omit relevant parts, and he also kind of he had a very perverse mentality, so he aped Christian terms but meant them in a satanic way. He called Satan his Lord, so people could misinterpret that as being from some kind of Christian background, but he was talking about his Lord and Master, who was the devil. And he definitely hid a lot of his meanings in a deep jargon. He's a very clever person, and he was able to really fashion a lot of these rituals and things that take a lot of time to really understand what he was saying. So there were barriers to definitely entering and understanding his esoteric principles.
Right. One of them that I've heard of was the, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but the Alamantra?
Right, the Alamantra working, which was in 1918.
And what was that all about?
Well, basically, Crowley was one of those people, when he did rituals, sometimes he would try to do them for effect, but they wouldn't take place in 1 day or 1 hour. They would take place over time to get the results, and one was called the Alamantra working. He also did another one at his house in Boleskine Manor, and very far north of England or in Scotland on the Loch Ness. It was called the Lord, I can't remember the name of it, but basically these would take place.
The Isle of Man, right?
No, it was very far north. The Loch Ness is very far north. He had a property up there that he did.
Oh, okay.
The Abramelin working, excuse me. But the Alamantra in specific, Abramelin. Okay. The Alamantra working resulted in a variety of different occurrences. One was apparently he spoke with this discarnate entity by the name of Lamb that he has a drawing of. And it looks almost exactly like gray alien form. Even before the whole UFO kind of craze, he had a contact with this being as a gray alien. And there's an interesting element to that, because one of Crowley's followers said that this alien Lamb that Crowley called Lamb was a disguise of Aiwass, who was this chief demon that dictated the Book of the Law to Crowley. So there's some very deep spiritual events that happened with Crowley. They were evil spirits, but this Alamantra working was just one of those workings that he did.
I've noticed that Lamb and the new cartoon or animated, it's not exactly animated, but there was a kids movie that just came out this last year called Megamind. That main character in Megamind looks frighteningly identical to Lamb.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I know that all of his rituals involved some sort of sex magic. Did all of them, or it seemed like that was one of the elements.
It's interesting that Crowley came, he developed over time. He got involved in these different programs such as the Golden Dawn Initiatory Program and the Masons, the Masonic orders, but these did not involve drugs or sexual activity. But what Crowley began to experiment with was the use of drugs in his rituals, and then the use of drugs and sex. And so that was he thought that they were more powerful and more effective if he added those two elements to his rituals. And that was one of the reasons why the OTO came and talked to Crowley initially, was that they thought Crowley had actually stole their secret rituals. But they had come to the same conclusions about ritual magic, was the inclusion of sexual practices in these rituals. So that was why the Crowley and the OTO basically melded together, is because they were both had the same kind of discoveries, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that on, I was sex magic all the way for the rest of Crowley's life.
Right. And that's that's really interesting, because my studies, and I even hate to say this because Crowley was so disgusting and so perverted, but there is something to be said about that. In fact, one of the very first magic books I read equated, they had a name for the energy released during orgasm, and they called it organ. And it's what makes the sky blue. Well, then now flash forward, 100 years or something, and you have Wilhelm Reich working on this, these ion things, and he's producing this thing called, this organ, this cloud buster, which is really funny because he's making the sky blue. He's busting up the clouds and making the sky blue. And then now there's people that make this stuff called organite. But back where I came from when I first started studying magic, that was the power behind a manifestation. It was organ, and that was the sexual energy. So I just find that very interesting, how it jumped from being an esoteric, powerhouse, to a piece of plastic that you bury in your yard and it makes clouds go away. I don't know. Seems kind of weird. Yeah, it is interesting.
Weird, actually. Probably.
Yeah, very weird. So now he had and you're working on your next book that's gonna be called The Children of the Beast. Is that still kind of the working title?
I think so, yeah. Children, the Disciples of Aleister Crowley. So I'll show his influence in our modern culture, how many people that he has actually, influenced, which is, I think, a very long list of people who, followed him. One is Jack Parsons, Charles Manson, L. Ron Hubbard, Timothy Leary, the members, it just goes on. And even Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, right. Oliver Stone, Kubrick, Bruckheimer. All these people who are important elements of our society are either straight up followers or have been influenced by Crowley.
The Beatles, they put a picture of him and the rest of their influential people on the picture of Sgt. Pepper's.
Alfred Kinsey, J.K. Rowling. Yeah. These people all have references that go back specifically to Crowley. So, he's as far as the dark side, he really was pretty much of a giant.
Yeah, no kidding. And he said he wanted to be Satan's chief of staff. So I think he kind of did that. And now he was nicknamed the Beast, and I think a lot of people. A lot of this audience probably isn't real familiar with Aleister Crowley, and it's really a good thing. But what is interesting is how Crowley has influenced society and musicians, artists, writers, politicians, directors, all this sort of stuff. His nickname was the Beast. And how did he get that nickname?
Well, he said it came from his mother. And when he was being kind of a young lad and being out of control, she started calling him the Beast. It was something that he identified with. So he actually called himself the Beast from the Book of Revelations, and he pretty much lived it up. I mean, he also identified with the Beast in the Book of Revelations and actually used it frequently within a lot of his writings. And the Great Beast was one of his titles that he made for himself.
Okay, all right. Because his mother, he would be so, he got really rebellious from what I understand after his father died. And then he would be, very naughty, I guess you could say. And that's when his mother would equate him to the Beast, which is kind of a terrible thing. I think one thing about Crowley's life that I have gleaned from reading just about him and the information that you have written and dug up about him is that you really do have to take care how you speak to your children, how you treat them, the things that you say to them and stuff like that. They it was almost like Crowley then became what he was called. And
he also, the way he was raised was so, for him, sterile. He was only allowed to read the Bible until he was 12 years old. So for him to come out of that environment, at least that's what it seemed. And, you have to rely on Crowley's autobiography for a lot of the information, which, may be skewed. But according to him, he felt like that was an oppressive environment for him because he wasn't able to do a lot of things. And he was an only child. He had a very interesting upbringing that he rebelled against. So.
Mhm. And then his mom sent him to the uncle, and that was a disaster. He called his uncle the vilest, meanest man in the world, or something like that, didn't he?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And then that one boarding school that they sent him to, they were horrified to find out that Crowley actually was enjoying some of the punishments that were administered to certain areas of his body, I guess, So I think it's I don't know, it should strike fear into the parent of everyone that has a would bare their child's bottom and start smacking it. You might want to think twice about doing something like that, Yeah,
he was almost died from some of the punishments that he received. He was fed on bread and water. He wasn't allowed to play. They made him work real hard. And he actually, I think, went into some type of, his kidneys stopped working. So, he was like near death when they pulled him out. So, those were the brutal English schools of the 19th century. So he was part of that.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible. So, you started looking at, so actually, instead of being a Beatles fan and noticing Crowley's picture on Sgt. Pepper and starting to check out books about Crowley, you started looking into 9/11, and this led you to Crowley. How did that all happen?
Well, I'd always been interested in kind of alternate views of events, so I was willing to consider alternate theories. When 9/11 initially occurred, I thought that the story that the government told us was true. But as I researched more and more and saw the actions, I realized that the event itself was a fraud. And there's no way that 19 Muslim terrorists could have pulled it off. So I was looking to figure out how it happened and why. Not just how, but what are the underlying reasons for that event and what did it cause? And so I realized, well, it really was a cause for greater global tyranny, war, oppression at home, a bigger police state, And it led, there were all kinds of malfeasance that happened during that administration. So I then realized that there was something even darker there, and that is the intent behind it, which is, mind control, lies, and that's what led me back and really recognized these numbers had significance. And so once I started reading to try to figure that out, it led me back to Crowley. And then I saw how important he was and how all of his information is underground, because there's basically a doctrine of silence for all these people who behave in these satanic environments. And I'm just trying to break the silence and understand this connection. And it's pretty amazing when you think that 100 years ago this black magician existed, and whoever put together 9/11 included his prime numbers in the event, which are 11, 77, 93, and 175. 93 in Crowley's system is a Kabbalic representation of two very important words, which are thelema and agape. Thelema means will, and agape is love. And so those equal 93 in the gematria, and so does actually the Iwas, which is the entity that dictated to Crowley the book, probably his most important book, which is the Book of the Law that he received from this evil spirit in 1904. So 93 is very important. Then you have Flight 93, and 77 has a very deep meaning. It's basically 7 times 11. It represents the conjunction of the beast and Babylon in Crowley's Seal of Babylon and his system. And in Anton LaVey's one of his books, it represents the 77 names of Satan. And then 11, Crowley called his master number, was the number par excellence of the New Age. And it is the prime number of 11. And it also operates as a signaling function amongst Crowley followers, because in the Book of the Law it says 11 is our number as those of who are of us. So they can actually signal who each other is by using that number. And that, with the date September 11th and actually the Flight 11 on 9/11.
Right. Wow. Do you? So I'm gonna go a little bit away from Crowley for just a moment, surrounding 9/11. And the reason why is because I saw an interview with a man named Paul Laffoley. Are you familiar with him?
It sounds familiar. Tell me about it.
Okay. Paul Laffoley is an architect, and he got thrown out of Harvard because they said he was too focused on his work or something like that. And he's like, wait a minute, isn't college the exact place that you're supposed to be too focused or overtaken? I mean, I guess they felt like it just, overtook him or something. But the thing was that he kept drawing things that they started calling him this Italian architect who kept building things that fell over. He was probably the guy that built the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So this guy kept building things that were odd, that were strange, that just kind of defied, normal things. And so he got thrown out of Harvard, and because he got thrown out of Harvard, it actually got some attention from some of the elites, let's say. And he met a man named Kiesler. Well, he didn't meet Kiesler. He eventually met Kiesler, but not before he had written 17 letters to Kiesler. And after the 17th letter, which was he sent the identical letter 17 times, but it was on the 17th that Kiesler got a hold of him. And he said, why 17? And he said, because it's number 17. It equals 8, which was a big, and Paul Laffoley had designed this whole guy's farm out in Virginia based on the Kabbalistic tree of life and all this stuff. Well, from meeting Kiesler, he interviewed with a design group by the name of Henry Roth and Son, who got a client by the name of Yamasaki. Yamasaki was more of a capitalist architect. He had been working in Dubai, and he hired this Henry Roth and Son, which was kind of a design group sort of thing, they formed a joint venture to design and create the World Trade Center. Now, the Yamasaki, he wasn't into quite so much of the numerology, but Kiesler had influenced Henry Roth. He had and Kiesler was kind of the one that was into the Kabbalah. And so the World Trade Center used a company called Bin Laden Construction for the construction.
Wow.
Yes, Bin Laden Construction was hired for the construction of these towers. Now, the thing that most people don't know, which Paul lawfully revealed, was that Yamasaki asked where in Mr. Lawfully's drawing had he made space or provision for the charges. And he said, charges? And Yamasaki said, yeah, like the hotels in Vegas, they get old, and if you find a better place to put it or it's less taxes, then you just implode your building and put up another one. And if you have the charges pre-put in these buildings, then it's easier for demolition if you need to move them. Okay, so all three buildings, which is why lawfully said Building 7 went down, was because all three buildings were connected and had these charges built right into the construction of the building. And now lawfully had designed because each building had to have 18 elevators, he said it was a waste of space. So he said, why not put a bridge between them? And he said that way, if there was ever a fire, you could easily get people across these bridges into the other building or vice versa and actually evacuate the building in 4 to 5 minutes. Yamasaki didn't want those bridges. He told him to take them out of there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I thought it was too. No, I don't know if lawfully is still.
How did you find out that information? How did you find out that information?
Well, I'm a strange girl, and I I research strange things. No, I stumbled across a fellow several years ago, before I was born again, whose father was part of Project Bluebeam, and he did what I felt was some really incredible research and some really great interviews, and his name is Freeman Fly. And he has he had a TV show on public access in Austin, Texas called The Freeman Perspective. And he had all of his Yep, The Freeman Perspective, and he had all of his episodes archived into his website. And I stumbled upon him probably 5 years ago looking up I think I Googled Illuminati for some reason and found him.
I'm a T-Mobile MySearch 4G phenomenon.
Are we all good? Are you still there? That was your what? That's okay.
I'm actually researching Paul Lafley right now, and I opened up a site that had a T-Mobile ad, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. So Freeman, who was exposing a lot of the Kabbalistic architecture, he's quite an expert on Crowley. I believe Freeman is a magician. I mean, it's pretty clear by the crystal balls and things he has sitting on his, but I just really felt that he was doing some really good research. He really pointed out symbolism and numerology and things like this. And he interviewed this Paul Lawfully guy. And when I got your information, I thought, I never listened to that interview, and now I'm going to, because I just wanted to know more about this whole 9/11 thing too. And as I said, I'm not even sure, is Lawfully still alive, or did he die within the last year?
According to Wikipedia, he's still alive.
Okay, all right. I think he is pretty cool.
Have you seen his artwork? Artwork?
No, I've not.
It's pretty amazing. It's all magical, Kabbalistic artwork. It's pretty amazing, because I've actually come across his artwork. I had no idea he was involved in the design of the World Trade Center, though.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes it even more interesting, because even some of his artwork has pictured of the hexagram on it, basically the symbolic representation of, the microcosm and the macrocosm coming together. It's also 666. Yeah, so that would be interesting. I'll have to listen to that interview. That's fascinating information.
Yeah, I just thought I would share that with you. He had, Freeman interviewed Paul Bonowitz, who's one of the only guys who's ever in the United States received a degree from a real university in magic. Not magic like I'm going to pull a rabbit out of my hat. I mean, as we're speaking of magic tonight, we're talking sorcery, black magicians. I mean, the stuff that, not kid parties, But anyway.
So I've heard about it. Yeah.
Oh, you have? Yeah. Because, again, I'm sure, Crowley had a lot of, influence on a lot of people. And, as you said, he wrote so many books and things like that. This doctrine of silence, I find that to be really interesting as well. 4 of the principles that I did pick up, from Crowley, he said that were essential to making any ritual happen or whatever, were to know, to dare, to will, and to be silent. And so he was really big on silence. So what is this whole doctrine of silence? Is that something the elite have? Is that why they'll show you things in movies, but not I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a way of preserving power and connections, which are essential functions of an elite. And so even just being an elite is almost occultic in many ways because they don't want to reveal their power and how they're operating because that's how they maintain their status. So for me, looking at this doctrine of silence, once I recognized that it was prevalent within Crowley and other people, I followed it back and I kept seeing this doctrine of silence in other places. It wasn't just Crowley. It was Skull and Bones, the Bohemian Club with its adjunct, the Bohemian Grove. It went back to the Hellfire clubs at the late 18th century in England, and even farther back into Greece and Egypt. And God only knows how they expressed themselves through those civilizations. But there was this emphasis upon silence, and silence is very valuable because it impedes truth, and people get confused about what's going on. So the power of silence is definitely something that pervades our civilization, and most of the people who are running with these powerful, corporations and politicians have this particular doctrine, and it's something people should know more about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the second part of my question with that is, do you think that that's why, like in the movie Knowing, Nick Cage is watching TV and you see an oil rig explode in the Gulf of Mexico, and a year later, a rig explodes in the Gulf of Mexico, and we have the most huge. I mean, it's probably going to affect the ecosystem for the next 100 years. Do you think that's why they sort of hide things in? Because you've also done a DVD on Hollywood, so I guess this is where I'm kind of going with this now. What have you found about the occult influences in Hollywood?
Well, I found out that it's everywhere, and even the numbers that express themselves through the events of 9/11 are through films of, directors that we're all very familiar with. Stanley Kubrick, Oliver Stone, Roman Polanski, and other films that even famous actors have been in, like, Nicolas Cage, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's almost everywhere if an individual has the eye to see and understand it. They're putting it right in your face. But a lot of people don't understand, and that's kind of part of the magic trick, The insiders know what's going on, and they don't say anything. They're silent about it, but people on the outside confused to the connections and the doctrines that these things reference. So, for me, that's why I kind of wanted to make that kind of documentary, was just to reemphasize that these are not just, these are happening all over the place. These occult markers. So, and even the occultism in the films are very significant. Like Roman Polanski, his films, Rosemary's Baby, Ninth Gate, and The Ghost Rider, just are seeping with Satanism of all different sides. I mean, The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp is an incredible film.
I didn't know Polanski did The Ninth Gate.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And that's kind of like a satanic Pilgrim's Progress. It's really the story of a guy who, passes all these tests and is able to enter into the satanic holy of holies. It's really incredible. It's an incredible. Once you understand it, and the main protagonist has his own holy satanic guardian angel at the end. It's just amazing. I mean, I don't want to. I could probably make a movie on it by itself, but the references are like 666, the lightning strikes the tree, which is kind of the Luciferian inversion of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, where Satan is the one who gives humanity its life. There's also the sign of silence in there. So this doctrine of silence is emphasized. There's the chessboard symbol, which is like something they use for the primacy of human intelligence. That's the importance of 88. And then there's the Whore of Babylon that, these people are with. And then there's the Hanged Man, which is a tarot card. But the Hanged Man is also used by certain tarot cards to distinguish life from the satanic view of life as opposed to Christian view, because it shows there's a deeper meaning within that card that shows that it basically shows that the self-sacrifice is for idiots, and so the whole notion of self-sacrifice in Christianity is eschewed and mocked and ridiculed in that card, and that's a prevalent symbol that takes place within the ninth gate.
Yeah, when you say you could do a whole movie on that whole thing, I really think you could, because those gates. I forget the name of the magic book that they come from, but
the ninth gate, and Kenneth Grant was a follower of Crowley, and he said the ninth gate is like the entryway into the Holy of Holies. So for him, the ninth gate, he actually had a book called The Ninth Gate, which symbolizes man's entrance into the temple in Jerusalem. But it's not like the normal way of entrance. It's the way to get into where all the old,
the old ones,
stuff that was
the ancient ones.
Right.
It's right. And there's a book, and I couldn't think. It's not the Necronomicon. It's something, but it's sort of like that. But anyway, yeah, it's like. Oh my gosh, it involves, these very ancient ones that are supposed to be like chained in a place like the abyss. And it's like people try and go and access these things. And the guy that wrote, started discovering this, he had a dream, and this stone came down, and some hooded black figures followed him, but then they disappeared. It's very, very, very bizarre, that whole thing. And okay, so what's really scary about that, or like maybe, I don't know if it's, because I'm not scared, because I have the power and authority of Jesus Christ, and so I'm not scared of it, but the scope of it just astounds me, that there are people that are practicing these deep, dark, satanic, Luciferian rituals, calling up these spirits and using these symbols, these sigils, and stuff like this to manifest all these things. And they're trying to actually isn't the ninth gate about actually penetrating that last, penetrating into the abyss, the Stargate that's holding this all behind it?
I'm not fully sure. There's probably a lot for me to learn, but at the very end, the movie ends with Johnny Depp's character entering into this kind of like Stargate / gate in an old castle. So, it's very symbolic, and basically the whole book is about a symbolic journey about Johnny Gate's satanic character.
Right. Wow. See, I've never seen the movie, but because I heard it was really complicated and hard to understand, so I didn't. But I know what movie you were talking about. I've heard other people talk about it, but I've actually not seen it myself. So, wow.
One of the interesting elements of it is ghostwritten. So the writer, whoever's credited on there as writing, isn't really the real person who wrote it. So it's unclear who actually. Polanski's history of satanic imagery and satanic behavior goes all the way back to Sharon Tate and even beyond that. I mean, Sharon Tate was in this movie called Eye of the Devil with David Niven, so it was one of her first roles, and she was a witch in that. And, like the whole story about Manson and everything is that there's definitely a larger satanic undercurrent there that was never really disclosed to the public, but it seemed like, according to my research, that not only were the Manson family involved in Satanism, but also everybody who was at that house on that unfortunate night.
Mm-hmm. So
there's a much deeper story there. They were not some kind of random people. They were all involved in occultism in LA at the time, and something went sour, and Manson sent some people over there to kill them all, and that's unfortunate. But Polanski has never left his satanic leavings, even from 1968 and 1960s.
Right. So for all we know, Sharon Tate could have been pregnant with what they call a star child, or moon child.
Right, and it was weird that they killed her and she was in her 8th month.
Right.
And there were a lot of ritual elements, there were ropes around people's necks.
Yeah.
So these are all like ties and symbols of binding. They put a rope around people in masonry.
Yeah.
So I don't really know, and there's a rumor that Manson actually, after the butchery was over, Manson did show up to look at the carnage that night. So, his involvement hasn't fully been disclosed in that event.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I definitely think there's something deeper there. Now, Anyway, I didn't mean to get off track with the Paul Laughley thing, but I just thought you would find that interesting. Yeah.
I'm glad. So that's very interesting because, I also did another thing on the, basically an article on the Rockefeller buildings and how occultic they were. And when you see an occultist like Laughley involved in the actual design, because the Twin Towers are a big 11.
Yeah.
They're actually broken into, and the 11 for a symbol of Crowley wasn't merely a number. It was also an ideogram, a symbol of opposites, a very important doctrine in magic, the bringing of opposites together.
And so, the towers.
And the towers were broken into 3 separate parts, so it's almost like a living 33, which is a very important number.
Right.
And then there was this great bronze caryatid, which is in the center there, and it looked like a radiant eye. The purpose of the building was to create a kind of New World Order in the breakdown of using agreements and all type like NAFTA and CAFTA and all these things to break down national boundaries. These are stated aims, and the Rockefellers also did the Rockefeller Center and UN building. So these are all very creepy, weird, satanically inspired and decorated buildings.
Absolutely. And I had also read somewhere where the 3 buildings, the 2 towers that were side by side, the Twin Towers making the 11, symbolize Jachin and Boaz, which are the pillars in Freemasonry, and they're also the pillars on one of the tarot cards. And that building 7 then symbolized the altar, because you go through the the towers to get to the altar, whatever. And so, and of course, building 7, there you go with that, 7 again, and the numerological significance. And of course, the tower card in tarot, that card is, old systems being torn apart, something being completely destroyed so that something new comes out of it, sort of like that phoenix.
Right. It's interesting. And I've also heard the buildings were also Kabbalic, because the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life has really 2 supporting structures, and there was also a reference there, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, the buildings were 110 stories each, so there's an 11 right there.
Yep.
I mean, the whole thing is really amazing.
Yeah, and then when you hear that the charges were actually built into the buildings, like they are into the hotels modern hotels in Vegas. And this was what Yamasaki basically was saying, but then he's working with the Bin Laden construction company. Hello. I mean, how much more conspiratorial does this thing get,
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, and basically Freeman in the interview with Lawfully, he basically only touches on the whole thing with Kiesler and the number 17, and then this whole thing with Yamasaki. Paul Lawfully probably actually only discusses it for maybe, I'd say, 8 to 10 minutes. And it is a, I think, 50-minute interview. But just to hear from you've seen his artwork, so you know that this guy he's walking to the beat of a different drummer for sure.
Absolutely. The occultic drawings and artwork, it's amazing.
Yeah, and, he's even talking in there about, the golden mean and pi. The golden mean spiral equates to pi, but you've heard of the golden mean, right? It's in everything. Yeah. Well, there's also a mean of is it Archimedes? There's another mean that's opposite, of course, because in Luciferianism, there's always a counterfeit. Satan always has a counterfeit to what God does.
Right.
So listening to this interview with Lawfully, I find out there's even a counterfeit to the golden mean, and it's called the Archimedes spiral or anti-spiral or something. And it's and there's a plant that has this opposite this I don't even know if Archimedes is right. But it's different than the golden mean. And there's a plant whose leaf follows that pattern and not the golden mean, and that leaf is the ginkgo biloba, which people are taking to increase their brain, their memory and stuff. Yeah, it doesn't follow the pi ratio.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm getting you way off track here, but
no, I'm learning something. This is good. This Lawfully thing, I'm gonna have to go and listen to that interview now.
Right. I'm giving you breadcrumbs, eh?
Yeah, good. I'm the kind of person who will follow them too. I'll just let you know.
Yep, I know. I am too. I bet you've gathered that by now.
I follow breadcrumbs all over the place. Believe it or not, that's how I came to the conclusions in my book.
Right.
It's just like taking one step forward.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, and thank you for sending me what you did. It's very well done. I like the fact that you use Crowley's own words as much as possible, and I think that's good because you certainly can tell, the degree of the man's ego and whatever else, by that. And of course,
anybody who can write a 900-page autobiography when they're 47 has an incredible ego because he hadn't even lived. He had another 30 years to go, and still, found the time to write this very ornate book. Actually, he probably didn't write it though. He probably just had it. He probably spoke words, and somebody scribed it, one of his followers. But
right.
Yeah, he was something else.
Yeah. Now,
I also one thing in
ahead.
the book I did is I added as many footnotes as possible, so it reads. It reads hopefully well, but it also can function as a reference work because, I think that, you can reference everything that I said. I didn't just make it up. It has a lot of accurate, drafts or pulls from his writings.
Yeah, definitely. The footnotes are excellent. Absolutely excellent. I learned things just in what you sent me that, that I didn't know, that I found really interesting, that I had some aha moments, going just because of everything that's going on in the world right now. It's like, you have to be able to connect these dots. And so when people like you come along and begin to expose those dots, and those dots start to come to the surface, and then you connect them, the way that you have, like the breadcrumbs, following, you follow them and you follow it up well. The footnotes are fantastic, and so it's also definitely serves very well as a reference piece. Now, You mentioned Bullskin, and that was his place on Loch Ness, basically, right? And then he also had another property that was on the Isle of Man.
No, it was in Sicily. It's in the island of Sicily. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
He found a place in Sicily where he set up his Abbey of the Will, or Abbey Thelema.
The Thelema okay.
Right, and so that's where he wanted all of his followers to go there, and the place was called Chefalur, spelled Cefalu, and it's run down today, but apparently the farmhouse he lived in still kind of exists, but he made it kind of a magical training center, and a number of people from England traveled there for his trainings, and some didn't get out alive.
Oh, really? Now, yeah. I heard that one of his assistants died of fright during a ritual where Crowley was conjuring a demon.
Yeah, I never came across that. You know, there's elements of his life that are clearly happened, but some of the things I just didn't come across. I didn't come across anybody dying. I didn't come across any evidence of child sacrifice, although he did write about that.
Okay. Yep.
But, the evidence of the kind of nasty stuff I did put in there, and he's very figure.
Yeah. The nasty, the ick. He was so perverted and gross. I mean, I can understand why no publisher would touch that White Stains book, because that's just awful. And I heard that, it was in your material. The first 100 orders for that book came with a, let's say, DNA sample on the front cover.
And that's the rumor. Yeah, they're rumored to. What's the right? I guess just. His seminal fluid is supposed to be on each one of those.
Right. I see we do have a caller. So I wonder, because I know that everyone that's ever had you on as a guest has talked about the Crowley Bush, Barbara Bush possibly being the love child of Crowley and one of his women that participated in some of the rituals, because she was friends. Well, it was Pauline Pierce, and Pauline Pierce married into the Bush family, correct? And
go ahead. Pauline Pierce was her. I think her husband was the publisher of Harper's,
right?
And she was in London, and you have to remember at this time this was the Roaring '20s. She was in Paris, which was the Belle Epoque. It was this huge place for rich people to go to in summer and spend time there, among the other artists, etc. And there was a time Crowley was there. He was always traveling back to France and London most of his life, so he was part of that crew. I mean, he was an aristocrat, and he was doing magical rituals that required courtesans or assistants who were females. And the story is that when Pauline Pierce returned, she was pregnant with Crowley's child, and that child was Barbara Pierce, who became Barbara Bush. And she had an interesting kind of courting with, the senior Bush, in that she was only 16, and senior Bush was 18, so it had that whiff of an arranged marriage. And, it's very, there's all kinds of peculiarities. The Bushes clearly are a satanic family. 9/11 had all kinds of elements of Satanism. I couldn't find any perfect evidence for it, but from what I researched and what I read, there are indicators. And when you look at the elite, they're into their, history, their bloodlines, and their breeding, and all that stuff. They have a much more concerned about matters such as that. So that would be, something that would lend that, George Bush Sr. and Barbara Bush would become. And then, you have to look at George Bush's seniors. His dad, Prescott Bush, was a sitting member of Planned Parenthood, by Margaret Sanger. He was a member of their board of directors. So you have like an arch racist grandfather, and then his son marries, somebody when he's 18. Very unusual.
Yeah, very unusual. And I know Crowley was cremated, so unless somebody's got one of the first 100 copies of that book, and I don't even know if the DNA would still be viable at this point, but that sort of intrigued me. I'm like, oh, since Crowley was cremated, I wonder. I'm going to pick up this caller and see what kind of a question they have. Is that cool with you, William?
Sure. Yeah,
all right. Let's see if my Discord will pick him up here. Hello, you're on the air with Doors of Deception and William Ramsey.
Hello?
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 Yeah, who's this?
Oh, hey, Dory. This is Brian. Brian Ingram from your Facebook.
yes. How are you? Oh, I see. Look at that.
I was just intending to listen on the phone.
Okay. So you wanted to stay muted then so you could just listen on the phone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I could bring something up here because you were talking about the Necronomicon and the gates a little while back. That's kind of where my research is going right now and what I'm trying to write. And, wow, having to go back and forth and revise it over and over and over again. But, I mean, I've come across some real incredible stuff in regards to the gates and how these different groups are working.
Okay.
And
it
comes down to some real crazy stuff that, I don't think a lot of people consider. And, I mean, I stumbled upon kind of looking through different regards of alchemy because, I mean, we grasp pretty much and understand that a lot of these different, old occultic sciences from, say, Phoenicia onwards have been kept alive within the alchemy. And I stumbled across this very bizarre little piece that was found in an Aztec temple named Emerald Tablets of Thoth / Hermes.
Yep.
And, I'm telling you, the pieces are pretty much sitting right in broad daylight with that thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Okay. All right. Well, Brian, thanks. I'll put you back on, you can go back to listening on the phone, and you have a good night, and I will catch you on Facebook.
All right, take it easy.
Thanks. All right. Emerald Tablets of Thoth. That's another really interesting esoteric book. Okay. So anyway, I don't know enough about DNA to know if the covers of any of those books, if anyone would happen to have one, if the DNA would still be any good, but probably not. I imagine you would have to have been mummified or something like that because mummification does keep a viable cell, from what I understand. And don't the elite all kind of trace themselves back to the pharaonic pharaohs, William?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. And it would be an interesting question to posit, but a lot of these guys trace their bloodlines that far back. I mean, that's why they prize themselves so much more than other people, because they think that they're relatives to Nimrod or something like that. I mean, they actually really do believe that kind of stuff.
Right. That some of them can trace themselves all the way back to Nimrod.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I don't know,
right.
How much truth is to that, but that's what they do.
Right, and that would be like some of the, then from Nimrod, they ended up being the Druids in England, and right?
Right, and I mean, there's traces. I mean, it's my understanding that somebody affiliated with William Cooper traced George Bush Sr.'s bloodline back to the Knights Templar. So if that's the case, that would be very interesting. That means that it's a bloodline of black magicians going back thousands of years, or hundreds of years, I should say.
Someone traced George Bush Sr.'s bloodline back to, say that again? The Knights Templar.
Knights Templars, right.
Okay,
was, I guess, who was the guy's name? It was
Jacques
in
de
France.
Molay.
They have Jacques de Molay. Thank you.
Yep.
So if that's the truth, then you're dealing with something that's very out of the ordinary.
Yes, and wow, that just gave me chills because I did some research for a book that I was writing before I was saved, and it was historical fiction because I couldn't trace I couldn't find enough historical facts to make it true, but what I did find was incredibly interesting, which I couldn't believe. This horrific serial killer's great-great-grandfather was the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, but the reason why he got lost for a long time in history wasn't until the advent of people really getting into genealogy as a hobby, which could be why this friend of William Cooper's ended up tracing George Bush Sr.'s line back to the Knights Templar with this, advent of people getting really into genealogy. So this information was lost for a really long time until the genealogy people started cropping up. And I found out that this great-great-grandfather ended up changing his name after they burned Jacques de Molay at the stake for protection for his family. But they were like the wealthiest family in France at the time that Joan of Arc did her, thing, and the siege on New Orleans. And I actually found occult connections all over that thing too, William. Just
over Joan of Arc?
Yep.
Joan of Arc, one of her associates was somebody by the name of
Gilles de Rais. That's correct.
Right. And he was a child murderer, and that's
who I'm talking about.
It goes all the way back to Crowley, because Crowley gave a discussion about Gilles de Rais at Oxford. It's kind of a famous speech he said where he was kind of a semi-apologist for him, and it's pretty disgusting. But Gilles de Rais was a real monster, and the Jacques de Molay was also, that the Knights Templar started out as a Christian organization, but the story was they got perverted into black magic and Satanism.
Yep.
And that's why they were killed. But if you want to read about or listen to about George Bush Sr.'s genealogy, you want to listen to the Skull and Bones version on William Cooper's Mystery Babylon series. So I think that's where it is.
Where can I get that?
I would Google William Cooper Mystery Babylon.
Okay.
And there should be a torrent out there. But William Cooper did fantastic work. It was a 40-hour series on just basically the occult.
Right.
And one of them was Skull and Bones. And I guess William Cooper was a major threat to the elite because not only was he telling things that he wasn't supposed to, he also started something which was like a independent intelligence operation. I think he called it KG, or Citizens Action Intelligence Committee, or something. But I think that's where he got his information, is that somebody out there in back before the days of the internet did a bunch of research in libraries. So I would anyway, William Cooper, Mystery Babylon, Skull and Bones. So that. Here's another thing, is that the elite have access to information in books and libraries that the rest of the public don't.
Right.
For example, in Skull and Bones, they have their own libraries. They probably have access to all of Crowley's works before the advent of the internet.
I'm sure they do.
So they probably have originals in there, whereas the average public wouldn't have access to these books except through, other publishing houses. This is back in the day. So these people were getting these ideas and keeping it for themselves, and the public had no idea until, recently, when you're the readily available opportunity to read these works. Like for me to read these works, and I was like, oh my gosh, this early stuff is everywhere. So I've been by happenstance walked into there's actually a Theosophic kind of temple in Los Angeles where I live. It's across from the University of Southern California. It's on 33rd Street of all things, and its address is 322. I forgot what the street is.
Of course.
It has a big hexagram on the outside, covered by the Ouroboros of the dragon eating its own tail. But inside there, they had like an open house, so I'm the kind of person who would walk in there. But they have their own library. And that was an eye-opener for me. So these people these are groups, and it's a fairly well-kept place with very nice architecture. And these people, they have their own access to information, and they're not afraid to collect, compile, and keep to themselves this, the secret doctrines.
Was that wasn't Manly P. Hall's? Is Manly P. Hall's collection in Los Angeles?
It is. It's a different place than that one. Apparently, there's like some. It's called the Study for Esoteric Studies, or Center for Esoteric Studies. It has a very vague name, but it has all of his library and all these other occult media. That one's closer to the Hollywood Bowl. I think it's up in the Hollywood / God Lord, just a kind of an area different than where I was at. I was closer to USC. But there's a lot of these occult areas up here. They do the Gnostic Mass around here. I know of that. So there's a lot of satanic stuff going on.
Wow, yeah, you're in the one of the hearts of it, probably there in New York still. Yeah, I really would be interested in. I didn't know, and see now you're telling me something that I didn't know either. That I didn't know Crowley gave a lecture on Gilles de Rais at Oxford, because
you can look. It's just called the Gilles de Rais lecture, and it's
wow.
Crowley covered all the bases of the evil people, so he identified with all the monsters of the history, of the Bible, he was just a real piece of work. So the Gilles de Rais lecture is, I think it's called the banned lecture or something. I think he might have been forbidden from giving it. My memory doesn't serve me well here. Let me figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, Gilles de Rais was really, really, really horrific. And again, when I first started researching was like back in 1998, and there wasn't much on the internet. And then I started researching again about 3 years ago, and there was a plethora of stuff. Again, I equate that to a lot of the genealogy, people really getting into genealogy. And, that's where I found out that Gilles de Rais' great-great-grandfather had changed his name from Sable to de Crayon because he was Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And then I started following dots, and France ended up selling Joan of Arc to the English because they couldn't execute her. She had helped liberate their country, so they sold her to the English again for something like 30 pieces of silver. Does that sound familiar? And then once she was sold to the English for basically 30 pieces of silver, then the English tortured her and et cetera, burned her at the stake. And then I also found a document from Freud. Freud had analyzed Gilles de Rais, and it came to the same conclusion I did, that Gilles de Rais had fallen in love with Joan of Arc because he was her commander-in-chief in the army, in the siege. He was her right-hand man, and then when she died, that's when he completely went to the dark side, and he was credited with murdering 200 to 800 children or something. I mean, it was an astronomical amount, and the stuff that he did was absolutely heinous. It was, I can see where Crowley could be inspired by a monster like that. So I guess it doesn't surprise me that he gave a lecture on Gilles de Rais, but I didn't know that till I talked to you. So you gave me some breadcrumbs too.
Well, I mean, you can go, if you want to talk about child sacrifice, Crowley's Liber 66 or Book 66, Liber is just a term for it, references child sacrifice. I mean, he talked about it right there, and in kind of vague terms that would be difficult to interpret, but basically it says, the master shall speak as he will soft words, and with music and what else he will bring forward the victim. He shall slay the young child upon the altar, and the blood shall cover the altar. with perfume as of roses. Then shall the master appear as he should appear in his glory. So the master is Satan. So if you kill a young child, Satan will appear. And then he goes on, this is book 66 again. He says, for I am a mighty vampire, and my children shall suck up the wine of the earth, which is blood. Thou shalt replenish thy veins from the chalice of heaven, and thou shalt be secret of fear to the world.
Wow.
Yeah, so there he receives the blood, and the child, there's Crowley, his perverted mind, using these kind of sacred symbols in the most perverted sense, the chalice of heaven, and he calls the masters. He actually capitalizes he and his, so it looks like something religious, like a Christian would say, but he's actually referencing Satan, not God or Jesus Christ. I also like to say that I believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah and the only Son of God. I just want to make that testimony clear. I'm not a Satanist. I've never been in any way, shape, or form.
Yep. I'm glad. Yep. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes, this subject matter is very dark and people could tend to possibly think, other things. But I think that any intel that we can glean from or about the enemy, because we're in a spiritual battle. We're in one of the biggest spiritual battles in history right now, the way things have ramped up between good and evil. Absolutely.
For sure.
And
without question.
Yep, without question. And I believe in I've never been into war movies or anything like that, but from what I understand, strategy, intel is very important. And, I think that it's important for us to know what these people are up to that live amongst us, and what little tricks do they use to identify each other without saying anything, and how do we recognize when we're seeing those things? And if we do see those things, they should become red flags for us so that we can, stop and go, whoa, is this what I think it is?
Yeah, that's extremely well said, and that's the signals and the numbers and understanding these terms. Like when I figured it out, I was like, oh, these people are signaling each other with the use of the number 11 and 93. I didn't understand that. And a lot of these information can be found out on like Wikipedia. It's just putting it, it's showing that it's being put into practice, I think, is why I wrote and made these movies in this book, that this really is happening. It's hard just because nobody talks about it in public school or in a college course doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's definitely out there. And everybody should recognize it, particularly Christians, because Jesus Christ commanded us to watch, and that's why you have a lot of these things on the internet, the Watchmen and stuff like that. Well, they need to watch, they need to know this information. A lot of this information isn't even covered by the Christian church in the world, which is, to me, is extremely unfortunate, because that's part of their job, isn't just to emphasize what's good, but show evil and reject evil, in other people, because Satan is using his followers as intermediaries to do his will, and that's, I think it's sad that a lot of these Christian pastors don't have a clue of that, especially the fact that 9/11 is a mega ritual satanic event. It's not just political, it's spiritual,
Right.
So that's the main point of why I wrote the book, is to show that this is within the context of cosmic human history. This is in the context of prophecy and everything that Christ talked about, and all the intents of the prophets of the past who described the end of the world. I'm not saying I know when the end of the world is. I don't, but I know that the birth pangs are taking place, and people need to wake up and watch and take the necessary steps to protect themselves and their families.
Right. Someone is asking if Crowley appeared in pictures with a Knights of Malta, Cross of Malta, Maltese cross.
I don't have one that I recollect offhand. He used something called the Baphomet cross, which is a cross it basically has 11 crosses on it. It kind of looks like a check mark, And I've seen that out there. I think that he might have had a picture of him with the Maltese cross, which was part of the Masonic regalia. So, yes, I don't know if it was very prominent, but he might have had a picture there. I have to go back and look. I don't recollect offhand. But, like I said, he used the Baphomet cross, and that was something that other Satanists have used in the past, particularly the guy who wrote Morals and Dogma. He was seen with a Baphomet cross.
Albert
I
Pike.
can't remember his name.
Albert Pike.
Thank you.
Yep.
Right, Albert, another Satanist. And so, Maltese cross. Yeah, so I've seen the pictures of the Baphomet cross that's out there. I saw it once on the movie, of the show Lost on TV. There was a cave that they all went to, and there's a prominent Baphomet cross on there. So, these things are definitely flat. Yeah.
That made my hair stand up.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is these satanic things are being shown all the time. It's just, people don't understand. It's like the intro to almost every Bruckheimer-produced film or TV show has this road, and at the end of the road you see this lightning bolt strike a tree. It's just straight up satanic symbolism that the Luciferians believe that this, lightning is used as a symbol of the devil, that the devil is giving life to a dead tree of human life, and that's how they worship Satan, is like Satan is showing them how to live this kind of the satanic or Luciferian notion of freedom, which is, do what thou wilt, total egotism, don't care what happens to other people, and it's disgusting, but it's shown in front of hundreds of millions of people, or has been all over the world. So,
have you seen that new Verizon commercial? Is that the kid's in his workshop and there's a kid working in his workshop or something. He comes running out with a lightning bolt and throws it up in the air, and it all and then it says, "Rule the air," and it's a Verizon commercial. And I used to think. We happen to have Verizon. We live in a small place where there wasn't very much of a selection for cell phone service providers.
Right.
And I thought my Verizon logo had a check mark. But after I saw that commercial that they have now, that's their Rule the Air campaign, I looked at it, and it's a canted square.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not a check mark, it's a canted square, and I'm like going, oh, yeah, great. Anyway, so I told my husband, we're switching phone companies. I don't think there's anybody that's safe, though. We have to use this technology, too, and I think if we, can use the Internet and the Internet for, connecting with other Christians and other believers, and we can share this information with one another, that's really important, that they, the people behind the technology may have Luciferian or satanic agenda, but we too can, we overcome that by the power and authority that we're given, as in Luke chapter 10, verse 19, that we are given the power to trample on snakes and scorpions, and that nothing that the power of the enemy comes up with shall harm us by any means. And so so that's one of the reasons why I'm really glad you wrote this book, because as you said, it wasn't just a political maneuver. 9/11 is what I'm going back to, is it wasn't just a political agenda to get somebody, to start a war, or, to get somebody taken out of power, or somebody putting into, it's not strictly political. If you look behind that, as you did, you see that there's a dark spiritual current going on, and it's really time, that people wake up to that.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And
yep.
Well, I was just going to say, on Verizon, like that, the check mark, their new handheld device for 4G is called the Thunderbolt.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's just all right there.
Yep. Yeah, and their new ad campaign, like I said, is Rule the Air. Well, hello, who rules the air? We know who rules the air, So even though this is really dark subject matter, and I'm sure it was difficult for you to research it. I know the deeper I got into researching Gilles de Rais, the more disturbing it became. And, no wonder. I was just going to say, Gilles de Rais and Aleister Crowley conjured the same demon. And I'll tell you
really?
something.
What was it?
Yep, they conjured the same demon,
When was it?
I will tell you in a moment. There's also,
Okay.
because I want to make this point before I tell you the name of the demon. There's a very
Great.
famous man in the New Age right now. He's very famous. He's very popular. He writes things that seem very loving and world. So it's interesting that, this 93 also means, thelema and love, will and love. These people, these Rosicrucians, and which also is an esoteric order, which I know Crowley had some affiliation with too, and maybe just a fringe affiliation. But this really famous
No,
New
it
Age.
wasn't French. Golden Dawn was talked about to be a Rosicrucian order.
Oh, it was totally a Rosicrucian order. Okay, so.
Yeah.
There's Rosicrucians today that are doing things that seem to be very loving, and they're spreading this love, universal love consciousness stuff. And I'm going to tell you that I ran across this guy's a group online, and their name was the name of this same demon that Crowley and Gilles de Rais conjured. And this demon's name, I will spell it. It's Belial. It's Belial.
Yeah, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yep, very powerful demon. Supposedly like the son of Baal is Belial. And there's this group on the internet that's called Sons of Belial, and they use all of this New Agers material, and I actually wrote to him about it. And I said, you realize you have a group named after you that's, you have this group that's, supposed to be your group on the internet that is using, this name of this demon. And he's like, wow. He actually wrote back to me and he said, no one's ever pointed that out to me before. And I said, really? Well, I'm pointing it out to you. And he said, well, I can't help what other people do. But you see, these people, they conjure these demons because the demons they're supposed to be holding them in these sigils, like the Key of Solomon, and that's how they bind, again, that binding. You talk about the ropes and, that sort of thing, and then they have sigils, and the sigils bind the demons, and while the demons are bound, they're supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to command them to do things for you. The problem is that you end up, sacrificing your eternal soul, and this New Age guy that has the group on the internet that's named after Belial is David Wilcock.
I've heard his name before. It sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce or something. Anyway, he's very, very big, very awfully influential. Again, big ego. But I actually watched this man change because, this was the tail end of what turned out to be my nightmare in hell in the New Age. I watched this man actually change his physicality, and I've heard Russ talk about people who are demon possessed or people with dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. When they switch, their eyes will change color. Sometimes, depending on what the entity is, the pupils will change to slits.
Wow.
And I watched this guy go from some scrawny guy to all of a sudden I see him at a conference and he's this, like beefy, bulked up, like dude, and I don't know. It's just weird. And so it just, it's so connected, and I think that's one of the things, too, that you have to find with numeral symbology that these people use. To them, it's really a big deal. They don't, on the satanic calendar, Aleister Crowley's birthday is a revel day.
Correct. It's October 12th.
Yep.
So they call it Crowley Mass, like it's a Crowley worship day.
Right.
I also wrote an article about strange correlations on the false flag terror events, how strangely they were related to feast days and Crowley days, like For example, the Cole bombing took place on October 12th. That's Crowley's birthday. And then you have 9/11, which is the 11th. You also have the Bali bombings, which took place on October 12th, 2002. These are all fake terror, by the way. The Madrid bombings, which was 3/11, it's 2000. So that's 2000. Then you have the 7/7 bombings in 2005 in London. So there's another high occult number, 77. And then Amman, Jordan, there was a bombing that killed like 60 people. That was 11/9. So you've got the 9/11 inverted. That was in 5. And then the attempted war with Russia, that happened on 2008, 8/8/2008. And that was kind of like almost started a global war on the 88th day, or 8/8, which is, how we talked about earlier, the chessboard, that symbol of man's knowledge, So all of these very important events took place on numerologically significant dates.
Right, and then we had just that earthquake in Japan was 3/11.
Right, and I mean it's weird. All these earthquakes it's huge. I mean that earthquake was one of the biggest recorded in history on an 11 date. So it's very, very strange. It's unnerving that I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and the coast, Japan's actually sunk something like 8 feet.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, the things are ramping up big time. So let's talk for a little bit about, so you have this book, Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. Correct. And then you've got a DVD of that.
Yeah, actually, I have two. One is just basically of all the stuff that I collect on Crowley, I put into kind of a visual. So that's called Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley. And then I also have the other DVD, which is basically Nicole Hollywood, which goes through a follower of Crowley by the name of Kenneth Anger. It details some of his recent talks about Crowley. And there's a direct relationship between Aleister Crowley to Gerald York, who is one of Crowley's followers, who is also a friend of Kenneth Anger. So these people all have actually a personal connection, not just ideological, but these people all are familiar with each other.
Wow. Yeah, Kenneth Anger, I haven't watched any of his films, but I heard they're pretty disturbing.
Yeah, he wrote some interesting, one was called Lucifer Rising. Kenneth Anger has a tattoo of Lucifer on his chest, and Lucifer Rising, all members of the Manson family, this person by the name of Bobby Bouzoulet, who was part of a satanic cult in the late 60s. Right. He was eventually sent to jail for life for murder, but he wrote some music for Kenneth Anger. He also, there's the Invocation of My Demon Brother, where Kenneth Anger is sitting in a Crowley-designed magical circle holding a Nazi flag and doing some kind of weird ritual. So these are very heavy-duty, satanic, for at least Anger in particular. Anger was also an associate of Alfred Kinsey, who is the writer of the so-called sexologist. Well, here's Kenneth Anger doing these so-called experiments with Kinsey and taking Kinsey to Crowley's Abbey of Thelema in Cefalù, Italy. So, so I have a picture of that in my book, or my movie about Crowley, with a picture of Alfred Kinsey, Kenneth Anger at the Abbey of Thelema, with a picture of Crowley in the background.
Wow. Oh, you know what? You sent me that picture. It must have been I remember seeing that now, and I couldn't figure out what I was seeing. It's got a weird shadow in it, too, almost like Nosferatu's there or something. I mean, right? Yeah. There's like a shadow between them?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that is a weird picture. Where did you find that?
Well, I just, through research, I just came across it. And they were very strange. Anger and Kinsey was a real monster. Was very, very deviant. It's scary to think that this guy was describing the sexual mores of a generation.
Exactly.
When he was, just about as evil as they come. There's an interesting element to when I called Hollywood film. there's a sequence that I have there from Roman Polanski's movie, which is Rosemary's Baby, where the Rosemary's figuring out that, these people are involved in a witches' coven, so she's reading a book about witches, and her husband's telling her not to worry about it. He takes the book and puts it on top of other books in the bookshelf. Well, to an uninitiated person, it would look very normal, but if you were a Satanist, he takes that book on witchcraft and puts it over a book of Alfred Kinsey and Sammy Davis Jr., who are both Satanists. So it's almost like he's putting it back in the bookshelf with his brethren. And I show that in my Cold Hollywood movie. And Sammy Davis Jr. is an associate of Michael Aquino, who has a relationship to Anton LaVey, who has a relationship to the OTO. I mean, it's just, these people all are networked. And it's pretty scary. And then there's the Hollywood connection. So.
Right. I have a question about that, but your website is www.occult911.com.
Correct.
I'm putting it in the chat room because they can get your book and DVDs on. They can order them right from that site, right?
Right.
Or they can get them from Amazon. Correct?
My books are both. The only movie that I don't have on Amazon, I don't have my one on Crowley on Amazon yet, but the other ones are going to be there. My 2 books are there. You can get it on Kindle or you can get a hard copy, and then the Cold Hollywood is going to be on Kindle on Amazon probably in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Sounds good. Because I know What'd you say?
I'm sorry. I'm working on putting it together. Unfortunately, I have to work a day job, so it's hard for me. I do this all my spare time, so
right.
I try to get it done. Yeah.
Okay. And then any do you have a release date yet for the Children of the Beast book? Those that were influenced?
I'm shooting for summer, so hopefully in about 2 or 3 months I'll have it completed. I have most of my outline done. I just have to do some additional research, but I think that the information that people will find in there will show that Crowley influenced a lot more people than they might think, and that the ideological followers of Crowley are not merely drifting or fading away into the background, but actually kind of gaining steam and really influencing our culture and our next generation in a very scary and negative way of, sorcery and witchcraft all lead to evil and, degradation. And there's this kind of a siren song for people to get power, but most of the people who follow this path end up, in really a bad state. Now, Crowley's followers all ended up either drug addicts, committing suicide, going insane, ending up prostitutes. Followers of Crowley are unfortunately making a really, really bad decision.
Absolutely, and I think Crowley's end of his life, broken, drug-addled, addicted to heroin, living in a boarding house, a seedy boarding house, from what I understand, in London at the end of his life. It blew through the equivalent of $20 million like it was nothing. And for what? It reminds me of that scripture, a profiteth a man nothing to gain the world, but lose his eternal soul. Right. And
these people, they're going to be in a very dark place on Judgment Day, for their wicked acts. And I just think it's disgusting that so many people are being seduced by this kind of call to become a magical practitioner, a sorcerer, or that this is some kind of cool route. So it's pretty bad. I mean, when you consider, for example, J.K. Rowling, her books have influenced millions and millions of kids and people, and she changed her middle name to K, not to a name like Catherine or Katie, but just to K because K is the 11th letter of the alphabet. So she gave herself a magical signal, and her references in her books are extremely occultic. She knows a lot about alchemy. She knows a lot about the Are You Serious myth. She knows about Robert Flood, who is another occultist. She puts all these characters into her films, and into her books. And if you see her films and watch them, some of the main characters in some of these films look exactly like occultists from the past. There's one who dresses exactly like Aleister Crowley. There's another one who dresses just like Rasputin, who was the Russian kind of
the Mad Monk. Is that the Rick?
Yeah,
The guy who played Rasputin in a HBO documentary. Rick. God, I can't think of his name. Is that who? That who that is?
Yeah, it's the same guy. His version of Rasputin is amazing. It's Rick something Waldman or something.
It's driving me nuts because he was in Robin Hood too. He played the Sheriff of Nottingham. He usually plays like a bad guy, and I can't think of his name right now. But that HBO movie of Rasputin was incredible.
Richmond. Yeah, his last name is Richmond, right? Rickman. Rickman. That's
what it is. Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman. That's right.
Right. It's the dyslexia. He's a great actor. My brain does the last name first.
Yeah, but look who those characters are. A lot of the characters in some of those movies are all strangely reminiscent of great occultists or evil occultists from the past. So I know I just
was a mad monk.
Really, at some point I'm really going to read those books and do a full analysis because it's like that programming, the predictive programming, or how entertainment actually isn't entertainment. It's actually programming people to believe in this stuff. And the stuff in Harry Potter, there's the lightning bolt on Harry Potter's forehead. Harry Potter's name adds up to it's 11 letters. There it is again. I mean, it's just all there. The owls, the magic wand.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. Crowley had his own magical implements. If you see my film on Crowley, there's actually pictures of magical implements that are from the Golden Dawn that are openly displayed at the museum in London, the British Museum, excuse me. And so, all this stuff is
the lodge, the Masonic Lodge in Washington D.C. has the original copy of the 777, Crowley's Book of the Law. Excuse me, the Book of the Law.
Really?
They have the original copy. Yeah, I found that out from Freeman too.
That's interesting. I have excerpts from the original copy written in Crowley's own writing in my movie.
Wow. Yeah. I think you'll find some of Freeman's older stuff, some of his older interviews, to be a real plethora of breadcrumbs, let's just say.
He definitely is a magician. He talks out both sides of his mouth.
Yep.
And he's talked about things that Robert Anton Wilson, who was a follower of Crowley and a friend of Timothy Leary, he was part of something called the Discordian movement, which is very arcane group. And Freeman Fly talks about Discordianism as an insider, not an outsider. So he's definitely... And Discordianism is like a doctrine of chaos where you tell truth and lies at the same time, and people don't know anything what they can't really get to the truth through that kind of wall of confusion.
I actually have a friend who came out of Discordianism and Mormonism, and he's some born-again believer now, born-again Christian. But I had never heard of Discordianism before. So I had
that's how you know Freeman Fly knows a lot more than he's saying, because he references Discordianism without ever explaining it. So, a lot of these guys are all the same. Sarian, Jordan Maxwell, Freeman Fly. They're all guys who are playing both sides of the fence. If not playing both sides of the fence and confusing the issue, they're actually engaging in more in chaos and Luciferianism than anything else. And most of their works those guys are all liars. They tell half-truths. So
half-truths.
You have to really watch out.
Yeah,
really watch out.
I agree. And again, I had found him at the very tail end of my new age pagan life, and so, but
I didn't come to a lot of these conclusions without, learning from other people. So for me, a lot of my positions are through trial and error of listening to disinformation. Like when I first came across Maxwell, I really studied him, and I took him at face value. I didn't really put a critical ear. Now, through people like Chris White or other people who really analyze his work, it's like, so this he's one of them. He's one of those magicians. And the way that these guys lie is different than, somebody who's an obvious liar. They create myths. So they actually put together, very complex, ornate myths where to control and deceive other people. And you see that same type of behavior in people like L. Ron Hubbard or, these people who have no problem using mind control. And mind control is a very vast, broad doctrine, but it's always a handmaiden to Satanism. When somebody's a really hardcore Luciferian, they don't have any problem, using mind control on other people.
Right. Definitely. I definitely agree. I too used to take these people at face value, and then, now I think Jordan Maxwell is one of the creepiest people I have ever seen in my life. And, he's living in somebody's tool shed in somebody's backyard right now.
I didn't know that. Well, he's in L.A. somewhere, right?
Yep. He's lost everything. So once again,
I know that he was prosecuted for selling stuff over the internet by the FCC for engaging in fraud, and
right.
I've seen a copy of that lawsuit. So, this is not, if he's shysting random people over the internet, it gives you some indication of his real moral character.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have to be wary of these people spewing, like Tsarian as well. Boy, is he slick. Tsarian's slick.
Yeah.
And
that's the whole thing. These guys have perfected their techniques over years. They do not. They're not first-time liars. It's just like Dianetics and a guy like L. Ron Hubbard. He starts off with very reasonable, sensible positions, and then he starts twisting the screws in. And next thing you know, you're a mind-controlled slave in his organization, And
right.
That's the way all these guys operate,
Right. And, Tsarian, when I was first listening to him, I didn't realize that the Bible verses he was using in 3/4 of one of his presentations were all twisted. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time, and I saw him debunked on one of the Christian channels that I go to get videos and stuff, and I watched the debunking thing, and they were taking those scriptures that Tsarian was using in his slide presentation a few years back, and putting them side by side with what it really says in the Bible, and not one of them that he used was correct. He had twisted it, he had left a word out, he had whatever, and, like I said, he's just one of these guys that's, the way he talks and the way he looks is just, like pretty slick, But anybody that has a tarot card website to teach you how to live your life through learning the tarot, that's not
He has
good.
He has all the markers of Crowleyanism. He has all that myth. He's written a lot. He's very egocentric. He's bisexual. He's in the tarot. Yeah, they caught him. She caught him soliciting for other men and women that he placed. That he said he was bisexual on some site. So that's my understanding. Very much Crowley.
Yes, that's black magic. Always involves bisexuality. Always. And it always involves extremely perverted sex.
Right. And Crowley was just off the charts in his perversions, and I include those in my books. I don't recommend reading my book on a full stomach or, without properly prepping yourself spiritually. You really want to pray up, as one of the hosts I was on stated very aptly, that, you don't want to read it. But Crowley's, and I tried to, I was hesitant about putting it all in there, but I think it's important to see how evil perverse these people were. I mean, Crowley was off the charts perverse. So, some people don't believe that human beings are like that, and they're really mistaken, because there is people can go to a very dark place, and that's why we have crazies like Hitler or mass murderers like Jeffrey Dahmer, and all these people, and the weird, even a lot of the serial killers. There's a lot of occultism there. They all have very, there's a lot of people who are into black magic who do that, and they have the same kind of characteristics. So you have to really be careful.
Yep, I agree.
For people, not you, but all of us, myself included.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. You need to be very well prayed up and covered in the blood, and because if you start researching that, Satan's a legalist, and if he feels that you're opening some kind of a crack or a legal loophole, so to speak, to come and torment you, send his demonic minions in to torment you because you've opened a window, a crack, he will. So very important to pray up first, and to know that the only reason that you're looking at this is because it's intel on the enemy, and in any battle you need to know your enemy. I think that's really important. So a lot of Alan Moore. Yeah. I'm sure you know.
He's an absolute Crowley follower. He quotes Crowley's opinion on magic verbatim. All of his stuff is suffused with Crowleyism, and he's essentially an open magician. I mean, he says he is. So.
Oh yeah,
he's a new Crowley. I don't know. He's definitely putting that vibe out there for sure.
Oh no, he has a picture of himself in front of a throne with the two snakes intertwined with the symbol of the egg in between them, or whatever, the caduceus, the sort of stylized caduceus or whatever, or actually old-fashioned caduceus. He's in front of a throne. He has a bunch of numerical numbers and symbols, like Enochian type symbols around him. He wears all these weird rings. He's definitely blatantly, yes, Crowleyan, Luciferian, whatever you want to call it. Alan Moore, definitely. And Alan Moore is behind the movie V for Vendetta.
Right. And which also has significant 11s in there, and there's a bunch of stuff. There's direct quotes of Crowley, and it's pretty interesting. The book has a lot in there.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I'm going to encourage everybody to get your book, your DVD, or your book and your DVDs. I am looking forward to getting both of them myself. And my husband sort of gives me a kind of a monthly budget to do that with, and I, try to, it goes first to the people that, I've interviewed and who've come on my show and that sort of thing. So, April, hopefully in April I'll be able to get your stuff. I actually did try. I remember I did try to get your stuff already, but I don't know, for some reason Google wouldn't let me. They're like, no, I'm sorry, you don't exist.
Some people, they can't do it with the browser. So for some reason the browsers don't. If they go and use Google Chrome, people can get it. But if they use Microsoft, it doesn't work. I don't know why.
Okay. So then I remember I asked you, are you going to put your stuff on Amazon? Because, I had tried to get it, and I think I was probably using Explorer when I tried to order it, and it just wasn't, copacetic with me. So anyway, but, I am
on Amazon. It'll all be on Amazon in time when it's a harder process than I anticipated. But I'm learning. I am learning.
Right. And then, like you said, you have a day job. So that's, you can't spend all your time doing that. So we have 60 seconds left. Please go ahead and give final thought and your website or whatever you would like to do. Thank you very much for being on the show, William. I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you. It was great. I love talking with you. You're very knowledgeable. It's just awesome. It went fast for me. So I learned some stuff on this show, too. So I appreciate your insight about Laughley. So I'm going to definitely research that. But just to finalize, I do believe that we are in a spiritual battle, and the best thing for everybody to do is, respect the writings of the Gospels and the true Son of God, Jesus Christ. That's my testimony.
Yep.
And if you're scared about these things, they are scary. Pray, and the peace that surpasses all understanding will be with you from heaven. And I wish all of you the best. Thanks again.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.